And I would love to invite Madam Rita Makhoul to interview Mr. Ahmed Alhassan, Bank AlJazira CEO. Please.
مرحبا. هلا مرحبا.
Hello, everyone. Oh, this does work. Thank you all for joining us today. We're going to have an interesting chat right now on the future of banking and how fintech is affecting it and all. With us today is Mr. Ahmed Alhassan, CEO of Bank AlJazira. I'm going to first allow him to do a brief introduction of himself, a bit of your past, and then we can take it from there.
Sure. So thank you for having me. I've been with Bank AlJazira for about 8 years now. Can you hear me? How about if I use this one? Yeah, so I've been with the bank for 8 years now. Currently, I'm Chief Operating Officer for the last 2 years. And prior to that, I was head of IT for about 5 years. We have gone through a digital transformation in this period, whereby we revived all of our technology infrastructure. We built data centers. We acquired a new technology when it comes to server, storage, network, etc. And we looked at software technology as a vehicle to do our digital transformation. So at the end of the initial journey, what we got is a refreshed set of technologies that will enable us to be on the forefront of offerings when it comes to the leading edge of banking products and services. Prior to that, I worked for Saudi British Bank, SAB, and before that, I also worked among the team who were responsible for establishing Sadad as a bill payment service in the kingdom. So that's a bit of background on myself.
It sounds like you've always been ahead of the curve, especially when it comes to technology.
I think that's just me being lucky.
Then, in your opinion, how or what are the advancements in technology affecting the banking industry as a whole?
Yeah. So obviously, one of the major advancements is the emerging revolution in fintechs.
Right.
So we're all seeing what is happening in the fintech world today, and as a result, banks have different ways to respond to that. There is also a drive from the market, from the consumers, where the demand, the level of expectations and the demand by the consumers is elevating day by day. There's also an improvement and a flexibility that is happening in the regulation, which will enable most banks to do things that previously would have not been possible. A good example is what we have been offering in Bank AlJazira, among the first banks, which is the enablement of opening an account with us without having to walk into a branch, which was technical and regulatory restriction.
Right.
In the past. We have found ways in collaboration with our partners and technology providers, whereby now a customer could go to our website, badge.com.sa, open an account and have a full-fledged account with the bank without stepping a foot in our branch.
Okay. You mentioned 3 very interesting points. One of which is the bank's response to fintechs. Another was consumer demand. And third, but not least, improvement of regulations. can we just like jump to fintech for a second?
Sure.
In your opinion, do you think banks should be worried about fintechs, about the disruption of fintechs within the industry? Or how do you see, like, what should the relationship be between banks and fintechs?
Yeah.
Fintechs, yeah.
In my opinion, fintechs is basically both an opportunity and a threat to what banks have been doing in the past. In our response specifically as Bank AlJazira, we have established a digitalization division, which is dedicated among its responsibility, and one of the key mandates of its creation is to have a response to what happens in the fintech community in general. And the way we do it is we respond in, I would say, twofold method. One is exploring what is being offered by fintech, and the possibility of having a similar offering from within our internal capabilities. So that's one dimension. The other approach would be, if that was not possible for whatever reason, is to see areas where we can benefit from having those fintechs. So it could be either through mechanisms of collaboration, or maybe explore venturing into some sort of partnership or acquisition.
Acquisition?
Yeah.
Do you think there's any right or wrong strategies for banks in pursuing relationships with fintechs, or on how to approach the fintech space?
The only concern that I would be cautious of, and I would warn banks against, is to be conservative and assume that fintechs will have no impact on banking, which is a serious threat in my opinion. Fintechs are a fact of life now. They're emerging. They're going to compete with banks sooner or later. And I think it would be unfair to the banking community if we assume that they will somehow be in their own league away from the products and services that the banks traditionally would have offered to their customers.
Okay. So let's skip fintech now and go to your second point, which was consumer demand. What, in your opinion, are 3 technology trends today that affect consumers within the industry, or it's shaping the industry for consumers, let's say for the next 5 years?
Sure. So maybe I talk a little bit about what do I mean by consumer demand. If we look at our past, maybe the last 10, 15 years, it would have been perfectly acceptable for any bank to ask their customers to walk into their branch if they need a specific product or service. And the customers would respond quite positively that this is a typical way of interacting with banks. In the world of today, consumers expect their offerings to be received at their place, not at the place of the merchant or the supplier.
At the time of their convenience.
At the time of the convenience, with 24/7 availability, and another challenge is instantly. The competition used to be between banks and themselves. So they would compare you with a peer bank, with a competitor bank, from a customer standpoint. What happens today is the competition does not only restrict itself to the banking community, but also goes way beyond that to other industries. So they can compare you to the likes of Facebooks and Googles, and even other industries such as the airline and travel industry. The fellow speaker before me gave an example about the vacation. I think in the same way consumers expect their vacation packages to be established on site the minute they go and subscribe from a travel website, they are looking forward in the world of today that they're getting the bank products in the same way. So instantly available on the spot at the time of their presence on the website, and they no longer accept any solution where the providing organization, be it a bank or a fintech, says, okay, we've received your order and your product will arrive in so and so days. So for example, your credit card is going to come in a 1 week time, or your loan is being processed and will respond to you in a few days. I think that's changing to be more and more challenging. So that is a typical example of what I mean by that the customer demand and the bar where customer expectations are has been elevated.
Well, considering that and considering fintechs and disrupting the space, how do you perceive like the bank of the future is going to be?
Okay.
Like, is it going to be drastically transformed from what we see today?
Yes. So along the same lines, I think the bank of the future will have a lot of its digital of its basic products and services available digitally. So a consumer would not typically require physical presence of a bank. They can interact with it in the same way they interact with organizations that only exist online. So that's one dimension. Which begs the question, what would happen to the branches that exist today?
That was going to be my next question.
Okay, so maybe I would elaborate a little bit on that.
Yes.
So in my opinion, the branches would not disappear. In the same way we thought about what computers and robots will do to factory workers. I think the workers will not disappear, and the people and our colleagues, employees of the branches will not just vanish and be transformed into computer machines and robots, but the nature of what they offer to the customer will be significantly better. And what do I mean by better? I mean that rather than doing typical time-consuming, tedious activities such as data entry or capturing the customer documents, which we now can replace with different solutions electronically, they will be doing functions that require a lot of more intense mental capabilities, like acting like advisors to the consumer, giving solutions and financial advice, being the consultant when it comes to how to manage your finances, your spending, your budget. So the nature of what they do on day-to-day basis would dramatically change.
But don't you think the number of branches would decrease though?
It could be, but I think the branches will no longer be what they are today. I think the branches will be experience centers rather than just basic service providing establishments. And a good analogy that I use internally is, even though you can buy your typical Apple products from almost every website that sells electronics, Apple did not shut down their stores. Why? Because they transformed their stores into experience centers, where you go and experiment and talk to people about the products and what they have in terms of their features. And I think as banks, specifically in our case as Bank AlJazira, we are transforming towards that direction.
Well, like you said, the skill set of the employees at the branch specifically, and I think possibly throughout the bank, their skill set's going to have to be changed. It's not going to be the same type of skill sets. So what would be required by the banks in order to build a bright, future, talented set of talent throughout their branch? Like, what should the banks be doing? Is it on the education level, or is it through the banks? I'm assuming it's through the banks where this is going to have to take place. And what kind of skill sets are they going to require?
Yeah. So the focus of a typical bank when it comes to hiring employee will transfer from being just a person who can do basic office work in terms of support, taking documents or reading out of a script and discussing basic information with the consumers. The staff would have to have more knowledge when it comes to what the customer needs are and anticipate how they can serve the customer in a better way, which requires a different set of training and skills to be provided to the branch staff. So the experience, in my opinion, would be more dynamic, and the knowledge of the branch staff would have to be elevated to accommodate that requirement.
But are there any specific programs the banks are developing to support employees go through this transformative phase? Or we see a lot of banks creating innovation hubs to encourage like a new type of spirit within the banks as well. Is that part of an approach to change the skill sets, or is that something completely different?
Yes. So it's twofold. One, which is internal to the bank staff, which I believe that the training departments are working towards accommodating for the changing needs in the branches. And the other is harvesting and collecting shared knowledge from the bigger community. And in our case at Bank AlJazira, what we're doing is we established a program we called Noor, which is, the objective of it is to take ideas from the bigger community, and that is in collaboration with the Saudi FinTech, which I thank for being a good partner. Saudi FinTech had their FinTech Day in Jeddah, which was done in alignment with our bank, Bank AlJazira, last Thursday. And in that day, we announced the Noor program. And in Noor program, we have put prizes, about 200,000 riyals, for the bigger community, be it students or anyone, to go on our website and provide their idea. And we are intending to choose the best ideas, and they get prizes, and potentially get transferred or transformed into banking products and services.
Is this something you've done before?
This is new, and this is along the wave of being on the forefront of the fintech community and being a good, I would say, partner of the fintechs in Saudi Arabia, and Saudi FinTech to be specific.
In your opinion, from your experience, what were like some of the key challenges you faced, whether internally or externally, when it comes to transforming and becoming more digital? Like going from a traditional bank to a digital bank. What kind of challenges does one face?
So one of the biggest challenges, which now is improving and no longer becoming a big challenge, was regulation, obviously, which I mentioned in your previous question. So it used to be traditionally that regulations do not adapt to the quick evolution of technology. So that is changing, and we thank Sama and Sama Sandbox for availing this offering and making it easy for banks to innovate and venture into offerings. And the other would be moving away from legacy systems and legacy processes.
Right.
So usually there is a big advantage for banks that are quite modern in their technology infrastructure, because they can accommodate faster to the changing needs of the consumers. So technology was always a factor that you would take into consideration if it was a legacy technology. The other dimension, I believe, is security concerns. So I talk about information security.
Right.
That is an area that you cannot venture into being or becoming a full-fledged digital bank without taking serious considerations of. Obviously, a small incident, no matter how small it was, could have a serious damage to the bank's image and reputation, and could set back the consumer experience a few steps behind.
Would you mind giving other banks some tips on how to transform with less of a hassle?
Well, I mean,
obviously the regulations are easier, some of the things have changed, consumers are changing. I think internally, C-level executives, their mentalities have also changed. People have become more accepting to fintechs.
yes.
But does this mean it's the end of the challenge today?
No, it's actually the beginning of the challenge. I think we're on our very few first steps on that challenge to be fully digital and transform into the banking community that we aspire to be in, especially with the Kingdom's Vision 2030. Where there will be a big role on banking to provide for both the end consumers, individuals, and small and medium enterprises, and also big corporates. And that experience has to be digitally first before any other way, which typically was the case in the past.
I think we only have a few minutes left, so I want to see if there's any questions from the audience before we proceed or anything. Are there any questions?
Assalamu alaikum. Can you hear me?
No.
Okay. My question is more about technology. Do you believe that after your technology transformation, you were able to reduce the operational load, meaning that you were more scalable to attract more clients than you used to have?
Yeah. Okay, good question. Typically with any technology evolution, just by having better and more modern technology that accommodates, first of all, for faster processing, bigger storage, and the latest trends when it comes to technology offerings like, I would say, DevOps, you benefit in two ways. One is that with the existing setup that you have, you can serve more and more consumers, so more and more clients in terms of acquisition and providing services. And the other dimension, which is equally important, is the efficiency and the time that is required for your internal cycles to develop products. So if I look at legacy applications where you have typically an army of programmers that write code versus the new way of doing things through open APIs and exchange of interfaces, reusable services, etc. It's much faster to do it in the new way. And I think this is giving us, as Bank AlJazira, a good advantage to be among the leading banks when it comes to offering the latest opportunities, the latest services that are being available either through Saudi FinTech or through SAMA or any other mechanism through our partners. Thank you.
Are there any more questions? Can I play a quick game with you?
Sorry?
Can I play a quick game with you?
Depends what it
I'm
is.
going to list some technology, like artificial intelligence, blockchain, and I want you to tell me if you think this is something that's real or something hype, especially when it comes to the banking industry.
Sure.
So just a quick one.
Okay.
All right? Ready? Artificial intelligence.
It's definitely real. It's becoming a reality in our world today, and we very much depend on artificial intelligence for basic tasks at the moment, but I think that will evolve to be a more and more critical function within every bank.
Augmented reality.
This is more futuristic when it comes to banking. I think it has its very good use cases in other industries, but I think it could be of use in the next, I would say, 3 to 5 years in the banking industry.
Interesting. Virtual reality.
Also very similar to augmented reality. I would give it the same time frame. I think it has its own advancement in other industries, but it would definitely move slowly to banking.
Cryptocurrency.
We have, as banking community and also with our regulators, strong concerns over cryptocurrencies.
Right.
So I would have my own reservations on cryptocurrency. And I think as an industry, it has been voiced as an area of concern and the advice to consumers not to go with that wave.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for the interesting topic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for restricting the time. For the restricting time. We have